Hello, listeners, and welcome back to part 2 of the Keeping Safety Simple series. Man, that's a tongue twister. I'm conducting this series with my co-host Shayne Connolly from Keep It Simple Safety. He is a WHS OH&S guru. This is the second part of the series. It's called Responding to Incidents Correctly. The first part was called Getting the Right Safety Systems in Place. Might want to go back and check that one out before you listen to this one if you have not already heard it. Again, we sort of build these series in a way that they tie into each other, so it might make a little bit more sense to you. Anyway, guys, hopefully you get something out of this that you can implement. And by all means, if you've got any comments, feedback, love mail, hate mail, by all means, please make sure you leave us some comments somewhere so we can get that feedback. If you want any follow-up questions answered as well, Shayne is part of the Facebook community and he is more than willing to contribute there. So please, guys, head across and join that community because it is another level of awesome. All right, that's part 2. We're jumping into that right now, and stay tuned for the following episode and the final episode, which is going to be called Moving Forward After an Incident, and that will also be a cracker. So look forward to that. Okay, guys, enjoy. The SiteShed podcast is made possible because of Tradie Web Guys, creators of beautiful websites designed specifically for tradies and contractors. If you're tired of dealing with web designers that have no idea about your industry, then head across to tradiewebguys.com.au and reach out. Like many companies from all over the place, you'll be very glad you did.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the SiteShed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to part 2 of the Keeping Safety Simple series that I'm conducting on the SiteShed podcast here with my co-host, Shayne Connolly. Shayne, welcome back.
Nice to be back again, Matt.
Shayne, we have already recorded the first part of this series, which was called Getting the Right Safety Systems in Place. That was obviously, as the name would allude to, about making sure that you are set up with the right systems and that you're set up with systems that actually apply to your business and have been customized for them. At the end of that episode, I did recommend that the listeners out there head across to your website, which is keepitsimplesafety, all one word, .com.au, where they can get they can go and fill in that, or what would I say, complete that online WHS assessment, which gives them pretty much a yes or no whether or not your systems are in order. So go and check that out, guys. There'll be links to that within the show notes as well. Shayne, in this episode, we're going to be talking a little more on the responding to incidents. Oh, man, I tell you what, I've worked in an organisation where, actually, I'm not sure what I had, and there was a guy who was who pretty much cut his hand open with a water jetter. And,
That's nasty.
Oh, but you know what? You see it all the time in businesses, and it's a case of, oh shit, take your work shirt off and go to the medical centre and say you fell over and did it or so. I'm guessing that's certainly not the right way to respond to an incident.
Oh, certainly not with water jetting. There's so many other risks for water jetting, but anyway.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely not the right way to respond. I guess let's do this episode assuming that you've got the right systems in place, because really you're in deep trouble if you don't at this point. So if you've got the right systems in place, then you literally do what your system says. So depending on what kind of incident it is, let's go with that one, that somebody's cut their hand open with the high pressure water gun. That the first and foremost, you want to attend to the person that's involved in the incident.
Yeah.
You can worry about the details afterwards. That's a serious incident. So they need to get to hospital straight away, and the ambulance needs to know that was water pressure that cut them, because there are some serious after effects you can have from that particular incident.
A lot of infection and stuff, apparently.
Yeah, it can go up your veins and your arteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nasty stuff. I could tell you another story about that when we're not on air. That's far too gross to talk about on air.
I'm good.
So it's not a post-dinner conversation. It's one of the joys of being in safety. You get to hear a lot of really uncomfortable stories. So the first thing is always to attend to the person. And what you do at an incident really does vary considerably on how serious it is. So if it's something that's reportable, in Australia and New Zealand, there are certain requirements for certain incidents. So if somebody has something amputated, they become There's a whole range of, I won't read them all out, it's about 4 pages long, different types of incidents that require reporting to the regulator. So that's something to take into account. Your system should outline what those things are so people know. Then it's a matter of deciding what needs to be done afterwards. So one of the things I used to do in a former life in safety is incident investigations, which is really not as fun as it sounds.
It doesn't sound fun at all.
Well, that's how unfun it is.
It's even less fun than that.
Oh, it's worse than being the police, I think. So some incidents, so if something happens and your first question is how the hell could that happen? That's something that should be investigated. That's a good, common sense measurement. Your system, your safety system might dictate which things have to be investigated if you've got a slightly fancier one. But in general, that's how I try to get people to think about it. If you walk up or if somebody explained to you what happened and your first reaction is, how the hell did that happen? Then you should investigate. And investigating is really quite simple. It's the same as the way you would investigate anything else. Who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
And once you get all that information together, then you figure out how you can try to prevent that from happening in the future. And the whole time you document that process. And I mean, that's a really simplified version of what would happen, but because it really does vary considerably from incident to incident.
Yeah. So step one, obviously, make sure that the person who's injured's okay.
Yes.
Step two would be to, what would you say?
Step two is really assess if you're not there, so if you're the owner of the business, for example, and you weren't there, get to site and make an assessment of how serious the incident was and take control of what happens next. The worst thing that can happen when there's an incident is that everybody forgets what to do. Nobody takes pictures or anything like that. Nobody takes any notes. And the next day, everybody's got different stories of what happened.
Yeah, gotcha. So document it.
Yeah, so especially if it's a serious thing, and even more particular if it's something that you have to report to a regulator, you want to have your story straight. And not for legal reasons, just because it sounds much better if you know what you're talking about. If you as the business owner turn up and the regulator's there to investigate and you don't know what the hell's going on, that doesn't look good. So, be there, get involved, understand what's happened, ask lots of questions, and document everything. Photos and videos are the best to do this because A, they don't lie, and B, they don't forget. So if you video, even if you've got your phone there and you video the person telling you what happened or the entire environment around you. So collect that evidence. Step 3 is investigate if you need to. Again, that depends on the incident, but anything that involves a trip to the doctor, you really should probably get some kind of investigation.
And would that come from internally or?
Oh yeah, you don't need to be a qualified investigator like I am.
Like yourself?
Yeah, you don't have to go through that course. And if you've got, and this is a good time where, so one of the services we offer is that particular service. So if something does go wrong, you just ring us and I tell you exactly what to do.
Okay.
So if you've got that to draw on, if you're using someone else or using us, then use that immediately because then you're getting expert advice on what you need right away when you need it.
Yeah.
And as I said, document, right? Fill out an incident form.
Yeah.
Fill out an investigation. Follow it up. Have a toolbox talk afterwards. Talk about what happened.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then if you need to change procedures, that's when you do it. Or if you need to change a piece of equipment, that's when you do it. Because they're all the result of your investigation. Were they doing it dodgy because they had a dodgy piece of a dodgy tool, or was it too old? Was it whatever there's 1,000 different reasons. Inevitably, when you investigate, it will come down to 2 factors: time and money. Normally, and I have to put the caveat that I haven't investigated every incident, obviously. All the investigations I've ever done have either come down to the fact that somebody was trying to do something too quickly or had skipped something.
Yeah, shortcuts.
Or somebody was trying to do something on the cheap.
Yeah.
And that's not just about when the incident happens. It might be that they didn't get it, whatever it was, serviced when it was supposed to be serviced.
Right.
Or it can be a whole range of different things, but they're the actual factor that that you can boil it down to at the end.
We interrupt this podcast today to talk to you very quickly about Tradie Web Guy's content creation program. That program has been designed specifically for trade-based organizations as a way that you guys as trade business owners can start creating content that enables you to engage better with your customers and your potential customers. It will enable you to build trust and build rapport, because what you're doing is you're investing in educating them. Biggest problem that we see with our customers today is that they're not regularly updating their websites. And that's a problem because, first of all, the search engines are looking for that. And second of all, potential customers are also looking for it. Tradie Web Guy's content creation program has been specifically designed to help you get regular, relevant content on your website consistently every month. We know that it's hard when you're out there on the tools, and we know that sometimes you don't always have the time to be able to do these things yourself. So we're taking it off your hands for you. It's a service that we're offering for you guys. We want to make sure that you're getting this done because we know how important it is. Anyway, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/content, fill in the form, and one of our representatives will come back to you. I know I've worked in a company before where, I mean, all the, the tagging and all the tool tagging and lead tagging and all that kind of stuff is pretty prevalent. And when you're working on site, like I sort of came out of construction and was working in heavily sort of used to that involvement into that sort of level of, management over tools and that sort of thing. And then I went to this other company that wasn't construction based, and they didn't do that kind of stuff. And their reasoning behind it, and it actually made a lot of sense. Like, they used to regularly train and toolbox the staff and the team. But they found that when they were tagging all the equipment regularly and doing all that kind of stuff, the end user, be that an apprentice or the tradesperson, whatever it was, they would just go and pick the tool up, check that the tag's okay, and then go plug it in without actually checking it. And they found that, a number of times, it could be a lead that's cut, or it could be, a number of different things. But because it's got a tag on it, it's fine, plug it in, off you go, kind of thing. So, yeah. What's your experience with that sort of thing?
Well, the testing and tagging, unfortunately, is a legal requirement. But I do tend to agree. One of the things you have to be careful of in safety is that you don't stop people from using their brain.
Right.
Because, I won't mention any big companies, but there are a few big companies that have such a prescriptive safety systems that people literally stop thinking for themselves, and they will follow the procedure to the letter. So if something weird happens, they're stuck because they've stopped trying to think a process through for themselves. So that's really dangerous. And the company you're talking about, they did the right thing. I mean, they should still tag their machines, but they should still drum into people. You got to look before you leap. And that's, again, comes back to that leading from the top. You've got to show people how you want things to be done. And that's super important. And that's one of the things I often talk to business owners about, is drumming into people that they do not want you to save that 5 minutes. That 5 minutes is far less valuable than a serious incident.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like you said before, that incident you pointed out before about the guy running back onto site to get his phone. Now, if you have to keep the job site open for an extra 10 minutes, no one is going to be upset. They might give you a hard time, but they will much prefer to keep the supervisor there, go back in, start the machine up, go and get your phone, do it properly, than for that sort of thing to happen.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think in that instance, no one actually knew that he'd gone back in. Like, it was the builders didn't know, the kid's boss didn't know.
But I'm sure that if you could talk to him now, he would probably tell you that I was just trying to save somebody some time.
Right.
I was trying not to be a pain.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the message you've got to give to your workers, is that's not being a pain. Doing things the right way is not being a pain.
Yeah, okay.
And so, that should go across your business, not just in safety. If you've got to stay there and put that extra washer on and do it the right way, then that's what we want you to do. And the same goes for safety. If you don't have the right ladder, don't put two ladders together and try and do it to save yourself 20 minutes. Get the right tool.
Well, it just depends on really the strength of your duct tape, doesn't it?
I've got some good stories about myself doing work at home, but that's me working for me. So it's a different environment.
The phone book's on top of the step ladder, that kind of thing.
I tell you, it's one thing. I do all this work with trade businesses, and I have such a crappy set of tools. It's just not funny.
I'm one of those sticklers, especially in the kitchen, where like my knives are always super sharp. Like but I know that, and I've experienced firsthand the danger of using blunt tools. Like you're hacking into things, and so like friends come over or whatever, and they use the knives, and they're like, "Oh, my mum especially, because her knives are bloody terrible," and they use our knives, and they're like, "Holy Jesus!" And I'm like, "Yeah," but. It's the same with tools, isn't it? Like you see it all the time, like people using the wrong tool or some dodgy tool for a job, and that's typically, like you said before, that could very often lead to a problem or an incident happening on site. Even like things like a blunt Stanley knife. Like how many times when I was, this is actually a pretty funny story. When I was working on site, I wasn't an apprentice. I must have been maybe a second-year journeyman or something like that. And I remember there was this Sparky on site, and his nickname was Stanley. And I was doing like a safety talk or presentation or something, and they were doing a roll call, and they called his name out, and his name was Tim. And I was like, "I thought your name was Stanley," and they all started laughing. And I was like, "What's funny? Why is his name Tim or Stanley?" And then they told me the story about how when he was an apprentice and he was stripping cable, and instead of stripping it away from him with the Stanley knife, he was stripping it towards himself, and he slipped through the cable, and the Stanley knife punctured him in the chest, and apparently it just like missed his heart or something. Like it went right in between a rib, and there was just blood pissing everywhere. So his nickname from then on was Stanley.
Yeah, well, that's one way to get a nickname. Surely there's easier ways.
I know.
But it does bring. I mean, it's a good point, that the tools, because one of our clients that we have, one of their procedures each week is to check their vans for all the tools that are required. So it's been proactive in the face of making sure that no van goes out without having the right tools in it. So you're preventing problems from happening. And that's really, that's a next level kind of system where you're being extra proactive, but that's what systems are supposed to do.
Well, it isn't it, really? I mean, you look at, okay, so if you
not
haven't
to mention the time they save.
Right. But if you haven't got a certain tool, like say you've left your hammer at home or something, or on a job site, and instead you use a shifting spanner to hammer a nail in, you know what I mean? Like it's going to lead to a problem. You're going to break your tool, like it's not productive and all those sort of things. But I think that's quite a good policy for any business. Make sure your staff's got the right tools, because if they don't, who knows, they're going to improvise.
But a lot of businesses just depend on people using their common sense. Surely you should know what's in it.
Yeah.
And that's not the best way to run a business, though.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So anything else when we're talking about responding to incidents?
So we'll cover off the other parts, what happens after somebody's been injured in the next series. But just to reiterate, make sure if you've got a resource you can call that resource. Mm-hmm. Make sure you document everything, and make sure you know what is supposed to be reported to the regulator and what isn't.
Who is the regulator?
So in New South Wales, it's WorkSafe. Queensland, it's WorkSafe. Victoria, it's WorkSafe. In South Australia, it's Safe Work, because they're a little bit backwards. And in WA, it's I think it's WorkSafe. They're all very similar names.
Is it a government body or is it state?
No, it's a state body.
Okay.
But they are government run, and they're literally there to part of their role is to educate, and part of their role is to enforce. So and investigate and prosecute.
So if something does happen on site, like responding to an incident, they're the people that you would have to call, and they have to come out and investigate it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if it meets their criteria for reportable incidents, then they would be. And on a side note, if you don't report something that's reportable, very nasty situation you can get yourself into. So if nothing else, at least look up what those reportable incidents are so that you're aware of them.
And so in regard to that, I don't expect you to recite what's right and what's not, but what are some of the things that you would not bother reporting as opposed to some of the things that you would?
Oh, if you just get, a cut on your hand and need 3 stitches or something like that, that's not what they don't want that reported.
Okay.
If you ingest poison, if it's a fatality, if somebody has something amputated, then they do have other more complex things to explain. But yeah, I mean, look, if it's really serious, then it's most likely reportable.
Right. And I imagine anyway, most of those instances, as soon as you call an ambulance or a cop, then they'll be onto that sort of stuff as well, right?
It does depend, obviously.
Right.
But yes, once they go to emergency and under certain circumstances, the doctor is required to.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether it's done all the time or whether it depends on the doctor, or I'm not really sure. I mean, let's put it this way. When it ends up at your insurance company, WorkSafe will find out anyway.
Okay.
So you can't avoid, and that's why I say even if you're not sure if it should be reported, just ring the regulator and say, this is what's happened. Is this a reportable incident? And they will say yes or no.
Is WorkSafe work cover?
No. Well, they're the same. They come under the same umbrella, but they're not the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why they have to have different names for everything, but yeah, they take care of the other side.
Okay.
So WorkSafe are trying to prevent injuries. They take care of what happens afterwards.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I guess the simple way to look at it.
Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that in the following episode where we're talking about moving forward after an incident.
It's a big part of it, yes.
Okay, cool. All right, well, mate, thanks for that. I think we can pretty much wrap that one up. Once again, for the listeners, head across to Shayne's website if you want to get hold of the that online free WHS assessment. It's pretty handy, and it will certainly give you a good indication of where you stand in terms of safety policies and procedures. Shayne, thanks again once for your time, and we will we'll close this one off, and we'll come back with the following and final part to this series, which is going to be moving forward after an incident. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Rock and roll. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.